Good morning. I'm Monique Presley in for Roland Martin. Coming up on NewsOne now, convicted killer Dylann Roof is expected to plead guilty to avoid another death sentence for the deadly Charleston church shooting. We'll have the latest on his case. Hundreds of protesters took the ride to Tallahassee, Florida, that is, in order to make their voices heard in the Capitol in support of State Attorney Aramis Ayala's decision not to enforce the death penalty. We speak with the organizer of the rally to get an update. The state of New York is now debating its budget, which includes a measure to follow in the footsteps of the rest of the country and ban 16 and 17-year-olds from being charged as adults, no matter what the crime. We'll talk to Angelo Pinto of the Raise the Age campaign. Sickle cell anemia and blood cancers continue to cripple thousands in the Black community, but there's hope for a better quality of life and a cure through bone marrow transplant. I'll discuss the issue with two bone marrow doctors and get their take on how the registry called Be the Match is pushing African Americans to donate marrow and save lives. And it's Fit, Live, Win Monday. R&B diva Selena Johnson joins me to chat about how she became a certified hot yoga instructor and how the practice has revolutionized her approach to health and fitness. And finally, we have Justice by Any Means host Malik Yoba joining us to talk about tonight's special episode. It's time to bring the funk on NewsOne now. Let's go. In exactly 1 week from today, convicted Charleston church shooter Dylann Roof will plead guilty to state murder charges to avoid a second trial and second death sentence. The Ninth Circuit solicitor told media outlets Friday that Roof will enter his plea during a hearing on April 10th in Charleston, South Carolina. The plea will spare his 9 victims' loved ones a second death penalty trial, since many of them had to testify in the first one. Roof has been awaiting trial on state murder charges for the death of 9 Black parishioners at Charleston's Emmanuel AME Church in June 20th, 2015. The deal won't save Roof from a possible execution. Earlier this year, a federal jury sentenced him to death on charges including hate crimes. Joining me on FaceTime is Meg Kennard, the political and legal affairs reporter for the Associated Press. Meg has covered the Roof case from the very beginning. And also joining me in the studio is today's panel. Attorney A. Scott Bolden is the former chair, D.C. Democratic Party. Lauren Victoria Burke is a political analyst and writer for NBC Black. And Eugene Craig is the CEO of Eugene Craig Organization. Welcome, everybody. Let's start with you, Meg. Good morning.
Good morning.
Why is it that you think Roof decided, after going through that last trial, and even though he's already been sentenced, to enter a plea in this case?
It's hard to say exactly what his motivations are. We haven't heard from him nor from his defense team. What is clear, though, is that the victims, those 9 families who've been living with this tragedy since June of 2015, seem relieved. The ones that we've heard from have spoken out and said that they are ready to begin moving on and that this will help them. You're right, for Dylann Roof, it doesn't change what could ultimately be his death sentence when, who knows when that will be carried out. We could have years and years of appeals to come. But at least for the families that have dealt with this tragedy for more than a year and a half now, maybe now they can actually start to move towards some closure.
So you have spoken to family members. Were most of them planning to go ahead and testify again for the second trial, or were they hoping that they were going to be able to sit this one out?
Not exactly sure who would have been testifying in that trial. Some of those details are things that the solicitor's office keeps pretty close until the actual trial comes. But the ones that we have heard from, Felicia Sanders, through her attorney, her quote was, "Praise God." As you'll recall, she did testify at Dylann Roof's federal trial. She survived the shooting herself. She watched her son, Tywanza, die in front of her, as well as her aunt. And I can't even imagine what it would be like for someone like her to have been strong enough to get through that first trial and then be thinking about a second one. It would be unbelievably difficult to me. And so now they don't have to do that. They can actually start to pick up and heal, which right now is the most important thing.
So how soon will we go to a sentencing phase once the state is willing to accept the plea, and I'm assuming the judge is willing to accept the plea?
Right. This is a negotiated plea deal, which means it comes along with a life sentence. In state court, sentencing in this kind of a case will likely happen that same day. So April 10th is the day that Dylann Roof will go to court, and unless something dramatically changes, enter his guilty plea on all state charges against him, including those 9 counts of murder. And so because this is a negotiated deal, he will then be sentenced and then formally moved into federal custody so that he can begin serving that death sentence on federal death row.
So as soon as that happens, this case is finally officially over then?
The prosecutions against him, yes. The appeals will be years and years to come. Dylann Roof in his federal case has already signaled that he would like a new trial. He says that the federal authorities actually didn't have jurisdiction to bring their case against him. Unknown if that will actually happen. It will be up to a judge to decide, but it still will be years and years before any death sentence is actually carried out.
Scott, coming to you, what is it that we can learn at this point from everything that we've seen and heard? I thought that the first trial was just an utter mockery of the system.
Yeah, but this is a very practical decision. You've got the feds. He's been sentenced to death for those 9 murders. At the state level, the state says, and Dylann Roof's defense team says, if he's been sentenced to death already, why fight this on 2 fronts? The state gets to save its judicial resources. And remember, Dylann Roof and his lawyers wanted a life sentence at the federal level. He would have pled at the federal level, except the feds weren't willing to offer it to him. So it's a very practical decision. It saves state judicial resources. It saves the victims from having to go through that same judicial process again. And so this really isn't expected kind of in the legal business. This is kind of just a practical decision. Again, you're still going to have people who say, why do I have to pay for his racism and white supremacist views by even keeping him in the system? This is a clear-cut case, even for those who are against the death penalty, that this ought to happen quickly. Right.
Lauren, sometimes people don't realize, just as Meg was just saying, even though it's over, it's not over. I mean, it's not like the trial from the first sentence is going to immediately take effect, which was death, or the life sentence for the second one. We're going to be in a fight here for a long time.
Right. I'm surprised that death penalty advocates didn't use this as an argument, not only for the death penalty, but to fast track the death penalty, because you have a case where the person has admitted that, of course, they've done this. But I'm not in favor of the death penalty, because I think we've had too many cases where we find out years later that somebody who's on the death row. No, I'm not for the death penalty. So you're either for it or you're not. You're not for it or you're for it.
That's you know against my DNA.
Absolutely.
I
mean, you haven't admitted murder, but still, I mean, we've had too many cases. You can't do it halfway in this type of policy. You're either for it or against it. I'm against it because we've had so many people who were found innocent later.
Well, and now in Kentucky, I think it's death by what? Firing squad? Is that what they're saying now?
Yeah.
Eugene, what's your takeaway from this case?
I'm a pro-lifer, and I'm pro-lifer through and through. I'm against the death penalty. I also think he'll get his due on the inside. I think there are enough actual hardened criminals in there that are just waiting to get their hands on him. I do think it was a practical decision. I'm no lawyer, but I can see that as a layman. We wouldn't want to put these families through that whole process all over again, having to relive those moments all over again. And I think it was a good decision on the part of the state and the feds. So don't make him a martyr. Don't kill him. Send him off to jail. Let our guys.
Why should we pay for his racism?
White
supremacy.
It's the way the system works. It's the way our system is set up.
The thing is, take care of it real quick.
We can take care of it. The thing is this. I believe there's only one entity and being that has the power to give life or take life away, and that's not the state.
Yeah, but Dylann Roof decided that he was going to be above the state and the good Lord.
We're not going to be able to figure out the death penalty solutions during the time that we have today. We'll be looking to see what happens on appeals. I am thankful at least that the family can put this part behind. Thank you so much, Meg Kennard, for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Now to a very disturbing story in Michigan. The mother of 20-year-old Demetrius Manderfield says her imprisoned son is being tortured because he is being denied the proper treatment for his sickle cell condition. Demetrius is being held in the Milan Federal Facility in York Charter Township, Michigan, on charges of sex trafficking involving a 15-year-old. No trial date has been set. A March 16th letter to the federal judge in Demetrius' case from a Michigan Corrections Department physician called Demetrius' condition life-threatening and recommended medication and transfusions as soon as possible. A statement issued by the federal court on behalf of Judge Judith Levy said, quote, Judge Levy has been well aware of Mr. Manderfield's situation since a court hearing in early March and has followed up with the U.S. Marshal Service and the medical staff at the Milan Detention Center. Joining us on FaceTime from Detroit is Demetrius Manderfield's mother, Tia Sumner. Thanks for being with us, Ms. Sumner.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
I am so sorry that you're here under such circumstances. When was the last time that you communicated with your son, and how is he doing?
I talked with him yesterday evening. He's still in a lot of pain, and he has had a migraine for about a week now. So we're very concerned about him having a stroke.
Well, what is going on with Demetrius' condition, and can you tell us what kind of medical treatment he should be getting that he isn't getting?
Demetrius is supposed to be transfused every 3 weeks without fail, and he's also supposed to be taking a medicine called Jade-Nu, which removes the iron from his liver, and he hasn't had that since he's got there. It's been 4 months now. And then also with his blood transfusion, they did give him 1 unit of blood on the 31st. But yet and still, he definitely needs a lot more, and he should be in the hospital.
Is there some sort of legal basis that Michigan and federal corrections officials are telling you for them refusing to give the care, or what's the story for why he's not getting it?
Well, the thing is they really have been notified since December of 2016. I started to call them right away because I knew that there was going to be an issue. But what it was we filed a motion. We had Demetrius' lawyer file a motion, and we went in front of Judge Judith Levy on the 7th of March. At that court date, she told me that she would decide in 24 hours whether or not I could take him home to take him to the hospital to receive care. After that, it was only me speaking with a civil lawyer. She actually was able to go into his case, and she told me that the judge had denied the motion, but she didn't contact his family. We had no idea. And the reason for her denying the motion was because she said that he could receive care at Milan. But the thing is it still took a whole nother month for him to even receive the 1 unit of blood that he got, which is, like I said, not enough. He should have been transfused about 4 or 5 times now, and so he's still in immense pain, and the migraine, it doesn't make any sense to me.
So it's not that they aren't equipped at the facility to treat him. It seems they're just at this point refusing to do so.
Correct. And the thing is the entire time we kept telling them that he either needed to go to U of M or he needed to go back to Carmano's to his regular doctors. When they took him 4 months later, really, but a month after the judge actually says she knew about it, they ended up taking him to his regular doctors at Carmano's anyway. So they could have taken him in the first place.
Scott, coming to you. Look, I wouldn't have to be a lawyer. I could just play one on TV to know there are big problems here, and especially at the levels, we're going to talk about it later in the show, that sickle cell anemia affects our community. What rights does this man have, and what should go on now? Well,
we shouldn't be laughing, actually, but I know where you're going with this, and I feel the pain of our guest on Facebook. Here's the deal. If you are imprisoned, if you're waiting for trial, then in most states, and especially at the federal level, you've got a right to medical treatment. Otherwise, you're sentencing an individual to maybe a life sentence or a death sentence if you don't give them treatment. The challenge with the criminal justice system at the federal and state level is not that they can't treat patients like this. There are a lot of people who need treatment who are in prison. The challenge is whether it's effective, whether it's efficient, whether it's timely, and whether they really have the expertise. In 2010, I think there was a report that came out about the medical medical treatment in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, which was woefully insufficient. Expect the state's treatment process to be woefully insufficient too. And so her lawyer, the mother here, her lawyer, and others have got to continue to press the court through motions and other public pressure in order to get him the timely treatment and the effective treatment, because it can be done. And I'm not sure what he's charged with, this trafficking piece right here of this 15-year-old. I don't know how old he is, but the bottom line is he shouldn't be suffering physically simply because he's accused of a crime.
Lauren, quickly, you know, we talked about over-incarceration over the weekend at the National Bar event. This is one of the byproducts, isn't it, that they simply do not have the capacity, even if they have the willingness, they don't have the capacity to treat the people who are incarcerated.
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. continues to lead the world in incarceration with 2.3 million people behind bars. This is one of the byproducts of that. We don't care generally in our society about poor people. We don't care about the incarcerated, and we sort of let anything happen to them. I mean, the Khalif Browder case at Rikers, which is finally going to close. I mean, my father worked at Rikers for 20 years, and all the stories he told me as I grew up, I'm sure, are all true. And this type of thing obviously is, I mean, our healthcare system isn't good when you're outside, much less inside the system. But we don't treat people incarcerated well, just as we don't treat poor people generally well in our society. So it's not a surprise.
And they are humans in the system, not cattle in the system. Ms. Sumner, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be in prayer for your son to receive treatment as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Coming up next on NewsOne Now, Florida activists and community members rally at the state capitol of Florida in protest of Governor Rick Scott removing State Attorney Amaris Ayala from a murder case. His move came after Ayala announced she would no longer seek the death penalty in her cases. The state of New York is debating whether or not to stop putting 16 and 17-year-olds in the adult criminal system, no matter what the crime. In case you're wondering, Roland Martin is on the Tom Joyner Foundation Fantastic Voyage 2017 cruise and sent some sights and sounds back from the voyage. We'll see those a bit later.
Because it's the Fantastic Voyage. It's here to support historically black college universities, giving students the opportunity to matriculate and complete their education. And that's why this cruise is important. But it's also one of the greatest times and most fun you could ever have. So it's great fun. It's party for a cause. We're proud to be a part of it.